Somewhere right now, a factory is manufacturing jet fuel out of nothing but sunlight, water, and the air around it. No wells, no pipelines, no crude oil at all. A few hundred kilometers away, another facility is freezing ordinary air into a liquid, storing it like fuel, and turning it back into electricity 10 hours later. And in a lab tucked into the desert, a machine shaped like a giant metal donut just held a reaction hotter than the center of the sun, for longer than any device on the planet ever has. These are not concept demos. They are working production lines running right now, and they are all connected to a single industrial goal that almost nobody outside the energy world has heard of yet. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how these machines work and why the country building them might be quietly rewriting who controls energy for the next 100 years. Here is why this matters. Every economy on Earth runs on energy, the same way a body runs on food. Cut the supply and everything downstream stops. Factories, transportation, food production, hospitals. For decades, that supply has meant one thing above all else: oil, pulled from the ground in one part of the world and shipped to another. That single dependency is exactly what makes this story worth telling. Because what you are about to see is an attempt to manufacture energy itself, the same way a factory manufactures cars or phones, using raw materials that never run out and never have to cross an ocean. The story starts with a vulnerability most people never think about. A huge share of the oil used by heavy manufacturing economies is imported. And almost all of it has to pass through the same narrow stretch of ocean between Malaysia and Indonesia. A channel so tight that supertankers effectively line up to get through, one after another. Picture the busiest highway on the planet funneled into a single-lane tunnel. A meaningful fraction of all globally traded oil squeezes through that one passage every day. Block it, even briefly, and the ripple effects hit factory floors within days, not months. Engineers and military planners have a name for the anxiety this creates, and for years, the only fixes on offer were partial ones.
Alternate pipelines, backup ports, buried reserve tanks. Useful, but none of them solve the underlying problem, because the fuel still had to be shipped in from somewhere else first. So a different question started driving research labs. What if the fuel didn't have to be shipped at all? What if it could be built on site, out of raw materials that exist virtually everywhere on the planet? That question is where the manufacturing process actually begins, and the raw materials involved are almost comically ordinary. Air, water, sunlight. Nothing rare, nothing mined, nothing that has to be extracted from deep underground and refined for months before it's usable. The entire supply chain for this new kind of fuel starts at the loading dock of the atmosphere itself. The first stage of production looks nothing like a traditional refinery. A capture unit pulls carbon dioxide directly out of the surrounding air, essentially filtering the same gas that industrial exhaust has been pumping out for a century. At the same time, solar-powered equipment splits ordinary water into hydrogen and oxygen. The oxygen is simply released back into the atmosphere.
The hydrogen is kept because it is about to become the single most important ingredient in this entire production chain. In a reaction chamber, that captured carbon and that hydrogen are combined under carefully controlled heat and pressure, and they rearrange themselves, molecule by molecule, into liquid jet fuel. Not a substitute, not a blend, chemically identical to what comes out of a crude oil refinery, to the point that an aircraft engine cannot tell the difference. One facility running this exact process opened in early 2026 outside Shanghai, starting at roughly 100 tons of output a year as a proof of concept, with a scale-up roadmap aiming for 100,000 tons annually within a couple of years. That is enough to fuel thousands of long-haul flights, built entirely from air and sunlight. But this is where things get interesting, because making fuel is only half the problem. The other half is timing. Solar panels stop producing the moment the sun sets, and wind turbines go quiet whenever the air is still. Batteries help bridge that gap, but even the largest battery farms in the world typically empty out after 4 or 5 hours, nowhere near enough to cover a full night or stretch of cloudy weather. So a facility in a desert region tried something almost nobody expected. Instead of storing energy in batteries, they store it by freezing air. Ordinary air, cooled down to nearly minus 194 degrees Celsius, turns into a liquid that can be pumped into tanks like any other fuel. When electricity is needed, that liquid is allowed to warm back up, and as it does, it expands roughly 750 times its liquid volume, a burst of expanding gas violent enough to spin turbines and generate power for up to 10 straight hours. One such plant, paired with a 250 megawatt solar farm, has been feeding a regional grid since late 2025, using zero lithium, zero cobalt, and none of the rare minerals that battery production normally requires. At this point, one tiny detail becomes impossible to ignore. Almost every one of these processes keeps circling back to the same ingredient: hydrogen. It is the fuel that powers the jet fuel synthesis. It is central to the clean electricity feeding the liquid air storage system, and it turns out to be the missing piece in an entirely different industry too, one that most people never associate with clean energy at all: shipping.
Hydrogen itself is a nightmare to transport because it is the lightest element in the universe and takes up enormous volume unless compressed or supercooled. The workaround is elegant. Pack that hydrogen into ammonia molecules instead. Ship the ammonia like any ordinary liquid cargo, then extract the hydrogen back out once it arrives. A production plant using this approach is now running without natural gas, without the extreme heat and pressure of the century-old industrial process ammonia normally requires, generating it instead from air and solar-powered water splitting at room temperature. It has already logged over 50 consecutive days of continuous operation at above 90% efficiency, and cargo carriers in East Asia are already testing ammonia-fueled ships on real ocean routes, aiming at an industry that moves the vast majority of everything traded globally by sea. And that brings the entire story back to one number: how much hydrogen can actually be produced, and how fast is that number climbing? Clean hydrogen output has grown roughly 6-fold in about 5 years, and one single coastal province is now building an offshore wind farm specifically to power the machines that split water into hydrogen. A project alone targeting tens of thousands of tons a year. The machines doing that splitting are called electrolyzers, and manufacturing dominance in electrolyzers matters enormously, because any country anywhere in the world that wants synthetic jet fuel, green ammonia, or hydrogen-based power storage eventually needs to buy one. A majority of the world's electrolyzer manufacturing capacity now sits in a single country, which means the hardware behind this entire shift is being exported the way oil barrels once were. Now for the part that makes everything else look small by comparison. Every process described so far still depends on something external: sunlight for the solar panels, wind for the turbines. So what happens when a facility needs power that never stops, regardless of weather, season, or time of day? That question leads to fusion, the same reaction that powers the sun itself, produced by forcing hydrogen atoms together at temperatures hotter than a stellar core inside a giant magnetically sealed chamber. One advanced experimental reactor recently held a stable fusion reaction longer than any device has managed before, pushing past a stability threshold researchers have chased for decades. Commercial fusion power is still years away from lighting a single home, but the direction of travel and the money flowing into it is unmistakable. Here are the numbers that make this whole picture click into focus. Clean hydrogen production multiplied nearly 6 times in 5 years. A single liquid air storage plant generates roughly 180 gigawatt hours a year with 0 rare minerals. One country now manufactures roughly 2/3 of the world's electrolyzers and about 65% of its solar panels. A major legacy oil refiner recently redirected hundreds of millions of dollars to convert one of its own fuel plants into a synthetic jet fuel factory. New aviation regulations already require clean fuel blending before the supply chain has even finished scaling up. And a fusion reactor somewhere in a desert just quietly broke a world record almost nobody outside the field noticed. Zoom out, and what emerges is a complete loop. Air, water, and electricity go in, jet fuel, fertilizer-grade ammonia, and stored power come out.
Nothing dug out of the ground, nothing dependent on a single shipping lane, nothing tied to the geography that has defined global power for the last century. For 100 years, energy leverage belonged to whoever controlled the oil field or the strait the tankers had to pass through. That kind of power fades the moment fuel can be manufactured almost anywhere, out of ingredients that exist everywhere. The new leverage belongs to whoever builds the machines, the electrolyzers, the capture units, the reactors, and sells them to everyone else the way oil producers once sold barrels. None of this is a forecast on a slide deck. It is cranes, concrete, and production lines running today. So here's a question worth sitting with. If fuel really can be manufactured out of thin air, what happens to every country whose entire economy is still built around selling the stuff that comes out of the ground? Drop your answer in the comments, and if this kind of industrial deep dive is something you want more of, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.